Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Nick Blumberg. Brandis Friedman has the evening off. Here's what we're looking at. Reaction to the ouster of Chicago Public Schools CEO Pedro Martinez. Is it time for Illinois to wave a new flag? We take a look at the choices being proposed.
It's the Festival of Lights, an 8-day celebration.
And WTTW's Geoffrey Baer digs into the celebration of Hanukkah in a new special. We have a preview. And now to some of today's top stories. The alleged killer of United Healthcare's CEO pleads not guilty to murder charges in New York. 26-year-old Luigi Mangione appeared in court today after he was extradited from Pennsylvania to New York on Thursday. Mangione's attorney blasted officials for taking him on a highly publicized perp walk, where law enforcement officers were armed with assault rifles, and embattled Mayor Eric Adams made an appearance. His lawyer said that Mangione's treatment jeopardizes the chances that he'll get a fair trial. 2 Illinoisans on federal death row are among the 37 inmates now facing life in prison after action by the White House. President Joe Biden announced today that he'll commute the death sentences of 37 out of 40 inmates. The 2 Illinoisans to be spared are Ronald Mikos, a doctor convicted of shooting a nurse to prevent her from testifying against him in a fraud case, as well as Jorge Avila Torres, a former Marine convicted of killing a 20-year-old woman who was a Navy sailor. He later pleaded guilty to killing 2 young girls in Zion. In a statement, Biden said that while he condemns the murders and grieves for victims and those left behind, he is, quote, more convinced than ever that we must stop the use of the death penalty at the federal level. If you were one of the millions of passengers passing through O'Hare or Midway today, you were in good company, or at least a lot of it. The Chicago Department of Aviation estimates that this is the busiest travel day of the holiday season at O'Hare, with an expected 243,000 flyers. Officials project O'Hare will see more than 3 million passengers between this past Friday and January 2nd, a nearly 8% increase over last year. Midway is expected to see its busiest day this coming Sunday, December 29th. Up next, reaction to the Friday night firing of Chicago Public Schools CEO Pedro Martinez. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Chicago Public Schools will soon be searching for its next CEO. That comes after a highly contested decision by the school board to fire Pedro Martinez. The vote was unanimous, but the move highlighted the divide among the city's leaders about the future of schools. Joining us with their reaction are Alderman William Hall of the 6th Ward, representing neighborhoods like Englewood, Chatham, and Auburn Gresham, and Carlos Montoya, the Vice Chairman of the Latino Leadership Council. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us. Absolutely.
Alderman Hall, you spoke out at this past Friday's school board meeting in favor of Martinez's dismissal. Why do you think is the right move?
Well, essentially, I saw prison-like conditions in my ward. I'm speaking on behalf of the black kids that live in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. Literally a week and a half ago, we saw helicopters on top of the school, kids on lockdown in classrooms, mace being used, police officers everywhere. A school that's called Englewood STEM, but no STEM teacher. So you have a STEM school, no STEM teacher, no STEM after-school programs. A principal is having to make decisions between buses for sporting, after-school programs, as well as field trips. This is a pipeline for prisons. Let's change the name to Englewood Correctional Facility, because at the end of the day, these conditions were the same conditions when we saw Robeson there. You tore down Robeson, built a new school. Same thing we're seeing at the state, tearing down prisons, building new ones.
Well, to what extent, though, do you think that, a CPS CEO can control, for example, if there are, police helicopters, things like that? Obviously, something like resources at a STEM school is more within his traditional purview.
Well, first of all, let's hold the state accountable for the bill that they have not paid. Pedro said that they were $1 billion short. The state spent $1 billion on prisons. That's error number one. We give them an F grade for that. Secondly, he signed off on the current budget. Listen, you have a school that does not have any money for after-school programs. He signed off on that budget. So at the end of the day, it is evident that there's not enough money to invest in extracurricular activities, schools that need principals, and then when we talk about the school where he and I walked down the hallways in the 6th Ward, it wasn't even a music teacher. So these are the conditions that, again, do not spark imagination, but adds on to the trauma of black kids in black neighborhoods in the 6th Ward.
Carlos Montoya, you know, the Latino Leadership Council wrote that the board's firing was, quote, a betrayal of progress. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, we think it's a decision that was made in the breach, a terrible example of poor governance. You have a revolving door going on with a mass resignation on one side, an ad hoc appointed interim group, and then elected board members just weeks away from being sworn in. But I think that Pedro has been working hard to address inequities, which are systemic. They're systemic. And you know, it comes at a time where there is a serious breach in terms of what is the plan going forward, right? What is the plan? Does the mayor have the abject power to dismiss somebody? Okay, why all the celebration or the cause celeb around without cause? And I think that there's pressure there to make a decision from outside forces, and I don't think that Pedro has been given the chance to really show what he can do.
Well, to that point about governance, though, I mean, Martinez at his own press conference after the firing Friday night, you know, he said he doesn't hold it against them in terms of the governance issue. They're duly appointed. They have the ability to act as they see fit. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think that it's still in a time of extraordinary, tumult. There's too much going on. Outgoing groups, incoming groups haven't been appointed, newly elected folks, and I don't see where this, with all that the city has to tackle right now, including being potentially ground zero for a mass deportation, that you need to put hundreds of thousands of students at risk. Nearly 50% of them are Latino, and as a Latino group, we're compelled to step up and say, let's take a look at this.
Well, you know, I find it interesting that there's a urgency in the wake of Donald Terrorist Trump, who has selected the Secretary of Education that is famous for the literally the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. Yes, there's an urgency to fix that before that storm comes. While there's the urgency for ICE, I stand in understanding of that, but I also am concerned about black kids going to prison. That's my burden. I'm a black man in Chicago. How dare I be silent when Pedro has pandered for months, years on end? He signed off on the budget before. We use this language, a high interest PPP loan. Well, Pedro has signed off on it before. Where was the effort to find the money and hold the state accountable? So the education agenda from the state is build new prisons. Pedro panders, and then we have it at a local level. I walked the hallways with Pedro. This is a 6th Ward perspective in which I was hired for. The lockers were dilapidated, back doors open, principal asking for outdoor construction for activity. What are we doing to our black kids, especially in poor neighborhoods? It's unacceptable. If you flip a burger at McDonald's the wrong way, you get fired. It's an at-will state, at-will city. It's the mayor's job to pick his choice. Lori picked hers, let the mayor pick his.
Yeah, but you've had really decades of decay and decline. To sit here and point at that, all of the, the needs of the school district on one guy is just, and to conflate that with it being therefore a prison pipeline. We can say that the school spends money on National Guard, so therefore he's National Guard Pedro, okay? I come from communities that are heavily Hispanic.
Well, I come from a black community. I'm giving a black perspective.
But are you saying there's no Hispanics in jail? Cook County Jail is right in the Hispanic community I come from.
I'm not anti-you. You shouldn't be anti-me.
I'm not anti-you.
Matter of fact, the
it's
law
not
said
a black Latino issue.
Matter of fact, the law said it was illegal for my people, black people, to read. They said it was illegal for you to cross the border. We should be allies. And the issue is, at the end of the day, Pedro has not produced a state agenda that's sufficient to fund schools. Teachers need trauma care. Teachers are underpaid. Yes, indeed, we want advocacy and innovation. We did not see it. He has enough time. Let the mayor do his job. We did not say this when other mayors picked their choice. Why is the mayor being stuck with what he inherited? Let the man do a job who has 3 children, by the way, that go to public schools. He always sees children first before he does the city of Chicago.
Well, look, there is, a lot is being made of this being a firing
Have you walked in these schools?
I may not have been to the elementary school in your
So I'm
district, but I've
speaking from
worked
the
in your
Sixth
district.
Ward.
But I was going to finish the point before
Where the
the
banks
interruption.
failed.
I would say this, that a lot is being made here of a decision made without cause. He could be fired without cause, so let's fire the guy without cause, okay? Now, obviously, Mr. Martinez will have his people look at what without cause may mean, or the various shades of that. But there's no doubt that the school, CPS, needs a lot of attention. Both of my parents were school teachers, okay? And they were union wards and stewards and so on and so forth. So I'm very, very sensitive to the greater, sort of macro conditions that affect the school. But to try to justify in retrospect the firing of one guy and point to him as being a funnel to the prison system, we've seen all that inflammatory language.
Well, it's the truth. It's the truth. And Inglewood STEM a week and a half ago looked like a prison. I've walked schools with Pedro, they look like prisons. And the reason why, which we're not discussing, when he got fired before for failed performance, he sued individual board members. He walked away with $800,000. He's holding up a teacher contract before WWF tries to take over, and he's trying to walk away with over $500,000, which he could easily fund families that are in Inglewood.
Well, and to that point about the fired without cause, he will serve 6 months more on the job. Are you concerned though about, he will finish the school year, but having that sort of instability of a leader being dismissed at the midpoint of the year?
Well, I think first of all, we have a great president. Sean Hardin is a great leader. He has the respect of the community. He has the respect of his colleagues at the board level, and he knows what he's doing. Whether or not we realize this, at the end of the day, we need someone who has innovation and advocacy. And in order to have that, you must have one that's amongst the issues in which I'm explaining are issues of black kids. Black kids in poor communities matter. And for there to be resistance when there is evidence clearly in our face of prison conditions that have not been addressed under his leadership. I can only speak about what I know and what I've walked through, and what I've seen is prison-like conditions that are being funded without any advocacy to stop it.
Look, I don't think we should isolate this to whether or not it is a breach or an attack on one particular group of the community. The Latino Leadership Council is about political inclusion. We've counseled with the mayor off the record to try to have influence, but where we can't have influence, we have supported new school board council members. But I will say this, that Hispanic communities are just as impacted by all of the deficiencies in the system, and it needs to be addressed across the board. Having this guy just sit sort of in a lame duck position because we want to get someone from the community. How's he not from the community? He is a student, an alumni of the Chicago school system.
Well, he walked in my community and he's fell in my community.
And there's 50 different communities that we got to deal with.
And the community I'm addressing is the Sixth Ward, and he failed. And we need to address failure by removing him, and he be accountable.
No, hopefully the Sixth Ward will get the attention it needs.
Well, my community welcomes you. We look forward to meeting you there.
All right, so something that you can both look forward to. I'm afraid that's where we will have to leave this, but there is much more to talk about, and I know we will be continuing this conversation in the weeks ahead. But
thank you so
much.
Alderman Hall, Mr. Montoya, thank you very much.
Okay.
Up next, why the state flag might be getting an overhaul. Stay with us. We all know Chicago's flag is ubiquitous. Illinois, not so much. WTTW News reporter Amanda Vinicky joins us now with more on an effort to replace it. Amanda.
Yes, Nick, 2024 may well be the last year of the Illinois flag as we know it.
Oh.
If you know it, because it is true. The Chicago flag, inescapable. Heck, I'm sure that you, like me, have friends with it as a tattoo.
I'll do you one better. I have the tattoo.
Yes, you do. You're one of my friends that I included in that thought. But I have asked around, and a lot of longtime residents couldn't tell you what's on the Illinois flag. Heck, if it were not for Illinois in all caps along the bottom, many people might not be able to tell you that it is the state flag. A quick factoid here, by the way, the state flag originally featured just that ribbon and shield carrying eagle. That, by the way, is the state seal. The Illinois across the bottom was added in the 60s because of a complaint it couldn't be easily identified as Illinois' banner.
All right, fair enough. So that's why there's talk of replacing it with what?
Well, with a dozen options, the state basically held a contest earlier this year and got almost 5,000 entries. A commission made of a few legislators and various other appointees, including a representative from the State Museum, chose the top 10. High school students came up with a butterfly, and then there's one that looks like a flower, but that's actually corn kernels, given the state's agriculture background, plus gears for the state's industrial past. Now, as you can see, stars are a popular design, often 21 of them, because Illinois is the 21st state. Lincoln's silhouette also pops up quite a few times. One finalist is the current flag. You see it in the middle, but minus the Illinois, and instead has borders added on the side. Now, sometime next month, an online poll will open and people can vote for one of those 10 or 3 other options. The centennial flag, the sesquicentennial flag, so that's when Illinois turned 150 years old in 1968, or last not least, voters can choose to stick with the flag as it flies now. Now, this whole process and timeline is laid out in a law that Governor J.B. Pritzker signed back in 2023. I recently, though, asked what he thought of the finalists. His answer was diplomatic.
I really like our current flag. I also like the designs that were put forward. Don't want to sound too political about that, but I mean, I think a lot of effort was put into that.
But ultimately, it will be up to him. The public, as I said, does get to weigh in next month. But then it's once again in the hands of legislators, who are under no obligation to abide by that non-binding online vote. Now, if the legislature does pass a bill changing the flag, it would be up to Governor Pritzker whether to sign it into law.
And he is not showing us his cards on this one yet.
Not yet.
All right, Amanda Vinicky, thanks very much.
Thank you.
And you can read Amanda's full story on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. Up next, we'll light up your screen with a new look at Hanukkah. But first, a look at the weather. Chag Sameach. A celebration of Hanukkah is shining a light on the Jewish festival of lights this holiday season. From uncovering the celebration's 2,000-year-old origins to frying up golden potato pancakes, WTTW's Geoffrey Baer illuminates Hanukkah's rich history and traditions in the new special. And our own Geoffrey Baer joins us now. Good to see you.
Great to be here.
So this was the first time you've done a Hanukkah special. How'd the idea come about?
Well, you know, there are all these Christmas shows on PBS. And there aren't very many Hanukkah shows. So our program director was complaining about that about exactly 1 year ago. And someone in the meeting said, well, Geoffrey's Jewish. And
suddenly, put too fine a point on it.
Suddenly I was recruited to make a Hanukkah show, which I hadn't been planning to. And I dropped everything and ran all around the city and captured what we could capture. And then we brought a wonderful producer on after that. And she made a great show. It's really great.
So you grew up in a Jewish household, but you didn't necessarily celebrate a lot of the holidays.
That's right.
What was it like getting to learn more about Hanukkah?
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. I mean, the show, I got to say, the show is very lighthearted. It is, our editor calls it a lighthearted romp through the other winter holiday. But you do learn a lot about Hanukkah. I don't know, spoiler alert, it's going to be on later tonight at 8 o'clock. And one of the things that, we've always been taught that it lasts for 8 nights because it's a miracle of the oil in the temple. They only had oil for 1 night. It lasted for 8 nights. That story was made up 600 years after the fact. So that was something I definitely learned that I didn't know.
It's a good story, though. You got to give it to them.
And it's about light in the darkness, which on a day like today is wonderful.
Absolutely. So speaking of the oil, you got to show off your cooking skills for this project. Let's take a look at you making some latkes.
Look, look.
Oh, look, I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
He's doing it, guys. He's doing it.
Then it's 2 eggs, salt and pepper, and it's time to fry.
But then the trick is that I fry them in schmaltz.
She says any type of vegetable oil will also work.
But I just keep turning them.
Both the grease and that smell can linger, but it's worth it.
Cheers.
Oh, those look good.
They were great. That was Mindy Siegel from Mindy's Bakery, and James Beard Award-winning chef, and that was some of the best stuff I ever ate.
Okay, my hardest hitting question of the night: applesauce or sour cream?
Right. So these are the traditional toppings on latkes, and I mean, it's like Governor Pritzker in that last segment. I like applesauce and sour cream. I really do. I mix them together. It's very good.
That's good, sweet and savory. It's a good mix.
Absolutely.
What are some of the other common Hanukkah foods you feature in the show?
Well, there's something I never heard of growing up. They're jelly donuts. They're called sufganiot. And they are these they're filled jelly donuts. Now this is these are the sufganiot. The shot right before that, Mindy puts brisket on her latkes. That was one of the best things I ever tasted in my life. Here we are filling the sufganiot at the North Shore Kosher Bakery with Ayelet Ben Ezra. Yeah, there I am making a total mess out of it. It was a really fun show to work on, and there's just a lot of laughs in the whole show.
Well, in the U.S., a lot of times Hanukkah can be overshadowed by Christmas, but there's been an effort in the last few decades to make it more publicly visible. I mean, how did that all come about?
Well, interestingly, that was the result of a very, very religious Jewish group, Chabad, this very Orthodox Jewish group. And they have this annual menorah car top parade. But they were seeing, long ago, they were seeing, Christmas trees and creches and things in the public square, which is, thought to be a neutral space. And many Jews, and the ACLU, with a lot of Jews involved, were objecting to this. Chabad went the whole other direction, and they took it all the way to the Supreme Court and won. And so now you see their menorahs displayed in public squares all over the world, actually.
And even if it's not your holiday, what's wrong with a little extra light in the wintertime?
Exactly.
Well, I know too, sort of coming into the mainstream more also can mean a little more of the commercialization that sort of happens with Christmas. I mean, how does that play out?
Well, one of the things I learned from the show was that really the commercialization of Christmas really doesn't start until the 1920s. Santa Claus, the way we see him with the red, suit and the beard, that's a total invention of Coca-Cola. And it is. And so, Jewish parents saw that these non-Jewish kids, the Gentiles, were having Christmas. It was a beautiful holiday. They felt their kids, maybe a little bit left out. And so, it sort of accelerated this idea. Plus, a lot of Jews, like in my family growing up, were celebrating Christmas. We had a Christmas tree, we had Santa Claus, and they were like, hey, let's it's another midwinter holiday. Let's give Hanukkah a little bit of love.
Yeah. Well, so locally in Chicago, outside of some of the religious observances, what are other ways that folks recognize and celebrate the holiday?
Well, I don't know if you have a clip of this or not, but there is a Hanukkah pop-up bar in Wrigleyville called 8 Crazy Nights. Here we are. This is a Hanukkah party at North Shore Congregation Israel, where I wiped out this kid in a game of dreidel. Sorry about that. But there is also, in addition to all this wonderful wonderful, lovely, family-oriented stuff. There's a Hanukkah pop-up bar in Wrigleyville called 8 Crazy Nights with such delights as the Rockin' Rabbi and the Sabbath Night Fever and the Messiah Melt. There it is. That's the Gelt Fudge Sundae right there. There's the Messiah. There's the Messiah. No, that's the Sabbath Night Fever. Anyway, that's part of the show too.
I confess I have had a drink there before.
Have you?
They're pretty tasty. The blue does get a little,
It is so blue in there. Like, it's all around. You come out seeing whatever the complementary color is of blue when you leave that place.
Exactly. All right. Well, it was a really fun show to watch. Seems like it was a lot of fun to make.
It was really fun, and the response already has been really rewarding. And I hope everybody tunes in at 8 p.m. tonight to watch it. You can also watch online anytime.
Absolutely. Geoffrey Baer, thanks as always.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here.
And that's our show for this Monday night. Check out what our reporters are working on by following us on Instagram at WTTW Chicago. And you can also stay connected by following us on Blue Sky. And on a programming note, we're off Tuesday and Wednesday for the holidays, but we'll see you right back here on Thursday. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Nick Blumberg. Thank you for watching. Have a happy and safe holiday. Have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to give back to its community in Chicago and beyond.